Hi, welcome to Luxury in Moderation, where we appreciate the finer things in life without going overboard. In today's video, I wanted to give some Europe travel tips if you are planning on going to Europe in the next couple months. It is still quite different, and different countries have different restrictions if you are flying from America. So I just got back from my honeymoon where I went to Paris, Venice, and Florence. So I wanted to share some tips that helped me travel through Europe a little bit easier as a US citizen. If you're new here, welcome. My name's Joanne, and every week I upload videos about luxury handbags and other luxury lifestyle products. So if you're interested in luxury content, please consider liking and subscribing below. So first, let's talk about France, and specifically Paris, which is much stricter than Italy. And these policies are changing every day. So if you're watching this a couple months from now, the restrictions might be either more strict or less strict, and my best advice would just be to check the US travel advisory websites, and they have the most up-to-date information. And the policy actually changed while I was in Paris. So basically, originally the US was on the safe travel list to the EU, so we could just, book a flight and get over there. In France itself, they did implement a health pass, or pass sanitaire is what they call it, and you would have to show this pass if you wanted to enter in any crowded areas like tourist locations and museums, or if you wanted to eat inside a restaurant. So the French are pretty strict about this, and they do not recognize the CDC vaccination card as their own pass sanitaire. So basically, in order to get a pass sanitaire, which is like a QR code that restaurants and museums can scan, you have to either get a negative COVID test, and on that negative test result, you'll get a QR code. Or if you get a vaccination in the EU, then they also provide a QR code. Now, since I got vaccinated in the US with the CDC card and it wasn't provided a QR code, originally the French government said that they would convert your CDC proof of vaccination into a QR code that the French would recognize, but I submitted all the paperwork to the French government, and actually the day after I left Paris, I received an email back that said actually the government didn't have enough manpower to do this, and basically that conversion process is not going to work. You will have to find your own way to get a pass sanitaire. So the way that me and my husband did it was we went to a pharmacy that was able to convert a CDC proof of vaccination card into one of the EU's QR code that, declared that we were vaccinated. And not all of the pharmacies do this in Paris or France. I think only specific ones, maybe ones with pharmacists, or maybe ones that actually do the vaccines, have the ability to do this. So I will try to find the specific ones that we went to. That was honestly the best way for us to go about it. Otherwise, if we were not able to convert our CDC vaccination to something that EU would accept, we would have to get a negative COVID test. They're valid for 3 days at a time. So if you're there for longer than 3 days, you would have to keep on basically retaking the test and getting a new QR code. So the first day that we tried to go to a restaurant, we showed them our CDC card, and they're like, no, we don't accept this. So we were turned away at the door. So they will definitely, not let you in if you don't have the proof that they authorized. I think originally they were accepting the CDC card as enough proof, but I think they're getting stricter. Now, in terms of testing, if you do need a negative COVID test, Paris was very easy to get a negative COVID test. They actually had tents almost every other street corner that someone was sitting in, and you could just get swabbed right there, and they would do a negative COVID test for you and get your results in 15 to 30 minutes. So then the EU actually changed their policy towards US travelers, and US was taken off of the safe travel list. That meant that now if you are trying to fly into either France or Italy, it varies per EU country, so you just have to double check which country you're going to. You have to show proof of a negative test, I think within 2 or 3 days before you enter in the EU country. And that is if they're even accepting US travelers. For Paris and Italy, they were still accepting US travelers. You just had to show that negative test. So since I was traveling to Venice, Italy after Paris, I honestly didn't think that we would need to show a negative test because we were traveling from one EU country to another. But just to be on the safe side, we did get a test before our flight to Italy. We didn't go to one of the tents, although I think they're perfectly valid. We actually stopped into a pharmacy. There are a lot of pharmacies almost on every street corner in Paris, and a lot of them do testing. And the guy was very funny and nice, I think, because he recognized that we were American, and he was like, "Have you had a test here in Paris before?" And I said, "No." So he warned me and said, "We go further than in America." So basically their swabs are thinner and they stick them in your nose further than if you got a test in America, where they kind of only swipe around your nostril area and you have to like swirl it 3 times in each nostril. They don't do that in Europe. What they do is they actually just stick their swab like really, really high up far into your nose and then take it straight out. So they don't like swirl it or anything. But when the guy was warning me, he was like, I guess he had a lot of experience testing Americans, and he said, it's going to be hard to breathe because they stick it in so far. You can cough, breathe, just focus on breathing. So it was nice that he gave that warning, because otherwise I wouldn't have expected that. So just another thing to note there. We did receive a email and with a negative result, so we wanted to get a hard copy of that to show in case we had to show at the airport. They did not end up checking that test between Paris and Italy, but the official policy is that when you're arriving into the EU country, it doesn't matter where you're coming from, you are supposed to show a negative COVID test. And also for our luxury lovers, I did notice in Paris that a lot of women in Paris carry Longchamp bags. I was actually carrying my crossbody Longchamp bag, so I feel like I fit in quite well. A lot of the Paris women carry the shoulder bag version. So if you do have a Longchamp bag, it's pretty normal to carry there. And because France and Paris are quite strict with their regulations and not accepting like the CDC as proof of vaccination, I do think it's deterring many tourists from going there. So actually a lot of places were quite empty and there were not long lines as normal. Their tourism is quite down. For the Louvre, there was a line when I went on a Monday morning, but the line was moving very fast. I think I got in within 30 minutes. And, again, all of the exhibits, all of the places that we went, there were not half as many people as normal. So that is one of the pros, I guess, of traveling during this time. You don't have to fight the normal crowds. They do, of course, require masks everywhere inside of these places. So I was a little bit worried that if I had to wear a mask, in a museum the entire day, whether the elastic on my ear would kind of, hurt the ear. So I did buy some ear savers, but I didn't end up using it really until the plane ride back. So then moving on to Italy. Italy still has many of the same restrictions, but they are accepting the CDC vaccination card as proof of an American vaccination. So you would not have to convert your CDC card to a European QR code if you are only planning to travel to Italy. Basically, if you want to enter in a museum in Italy, you just show your CDC card and they will let you through. They will also take your temperature. So almost all the places that I went in Italy, they took my temperature. When I went to a mall in Paris, they also took my temperature. But I think, yeah, in Italy, it's just a little bit easier to get around. Now, that does mean that there were more tourists in Italy. So there were longer lines, still, again, not half as much as usual. Now, in terms of getting back to the US, the US itself does have the policy of showing a negative COVID test within 3 days of your flight. So, no matter where you are coming in from, you have to show a negative COVID test. So, I had to get tested in Florence, Italy before flying to first Paris and then connecting back to the States. There are many rapid tests that are possible that the US accepts, including like a molecular test, an antigen test. And for Italy, it's not as easy to get tested. It's not like in Paris where I said that they had testing tents on every street. In Italy, they really only have it in a few places. They do have it at train stations, so it's free at the train station. These testing stations are run by the Red Cross. So there's usually a very long line at these places, whether they open at like 7:30 or 8 a.m. People are usually lining up at least an hour beforehand. Because it is free, I think a lot of travelers, even within the EU and of course traveling back to the US, need these tests. I ended up going to a pharmacy which was able to do a rapid test for me. At the pharmacy, it did cost 22 euros, so it wasn't free like at the train station. And I also had to make an appointment at least like a couple days beforehand to make sure I got a time slot. The pharmacy took a lunch break between 1 p.m. and like 3:30 p.m. So to make sure that I could get tested, within the 3 days, but not have to wait in line for like hours and hours, I just thought that was the path of least resistance for me. So again, in Italy, they swabbed like in Paris, where they had a very long, thin swab. They stuck it up your nose. We got our negative result in 30 minutes. The pharmacy had to like register it in the system. So we also got an email with a digital confirmation. I made sure to keep the hard copy to show at the airport. So they did check on the flight back to the US before we boarded. There was somebody who was checking all the documents, not only your passport, but also this negative COVID result. So it was really quick. She didn't spend a lot of time looking at the negative test. She just wanted to check, yep, it's negative. Yep, it's within the 3 days. And then she let me board. But they are quite strict on that. The European planes are usually slightly smaller than American planes, so even if your carry-on luggage fit in an airplane overhead space in the US, that will probably not fit in the European airplane overhead space, and they will likely check your carry-on luggage. I think they usually offer to check it for free anyways, because they're like, oh, does that fit in a US airplane? Because it won't fit in our European airplane. I did end up checking my carry-on, and of course I made sure that there was no expensive or luxury pieces that were checked. I carried my Birkin and all of my Hermes pieces by hand because I do think it is a little bit more prevalent outside of the US for people to rifle through checked luggage. So at the airport, it was very common to see people wrapping up their luggage in like that plastic saran wrap stuff. And, a lot of people did it, even with like small luggages. It's very common. Finally, after I arrived back in the airport in New York, we all had to go through customs, and they actually shut down the kiosks where you can do a digital customs check through, the normal questions like, oh, did you touch livestock? Those questions that they always want you to answer when you're coming back into the States. Because of COVID, we couldn't use any of the kiosks, and there was basically a huge line to see an actual person and answer all these questions and check your passport. So You know how normally you're not supposed to be on your phone during like this customs lines because they don't want you to either take pictures of it, or they don't want you like on your phone and not paying attention to the instructions that they're giving? This time, there was actually a border guard who made an announcement. He was just like, hey, everybody, look, we have a mobile passport customs line and nobody's in it. So basically, go to your app store and download the mobile passport app. Answer the questions there. You enter in your passport number, of course, and you take a picture of yourself, but then you can get into the mobile line and it's, you're able to go through much more quickly. So a lot of people, were on their phone downloading it, filling out the form, and then once you fill out everything in the mobile app, then you get a QR code which they scan really quickly. The mobile passport app has the word airside written on top of it, and then there's a picture of a man with, it looks like his arm sticking out. So this is the app that they told us to download. I used it. I just took a picture of myself in line with my mask pulled down, and then I was able to fill out the questions. I got the QR code, and then I was able to get into that mobile passport line. Basically, they just scan your QR code, they check your passport, and if everything looks fine, you can go through. For me, when they scanned my QR code, the guy was like, oh, there's a glitch, but don't worry because that happens every so often. So he just had me see another available agent really quickly. He was like, I won't make you stand in line again, don't worry. And they just checked my passport and they're like, okay, it's great, you can go ahead and go to your luggage. So that's just another quick tip. If you are planning to fly in and out of the States, make sure you get your test within the 3 days. Be prepared with the mobile passport app so you don't have to stand in line. And then a little bit more about the Vat Tax Back process. If you are planning on purchasing a lot of things in Europe, there are actually different VAT policies in each country. So I had experience in both France and Italy. In Paris, the tax rate is about 20%, and that is already calculated into the price tag that you are paying. So you, a non-EU citizen, can get some of that tax back. Not the full 20%, but I think like 10 to 15%. And then there are also different thresholds on when you can apply for VAT tax. So for example, in France, I believe you have to buy at least 100 euros of something at a store, like on the same receipt, in order for them to then issue you a specific VAT receipt. So they had to verify, what is your US address? What is my passport number? And then basically Hermes gave me a personal receipt for me to keep, and then another paper receipt in this envelope, which I was then supposed to mail back to this company, which is called Global Blue. So I think this is the company that processes all of these VAT requests. But it was explained to me actually that when the company processes the VAT tax request, they actually pull the money from the place that you bought it. So actually Hermes is paying me back the tax that they charged me. It's not this Global Blue or the government that is paying back the tax money. It's the place that you bought it from. Then as you can see here, there is an address that this envelope will go to. And it has very simple instructions here. It's actually not very descriptive. It just says, mail this back, and there's supposed to be a stamp at some point, but I was still a little bit confused and worried as I got to the airport, because you are supposed to only mail these VAT requests back in the last EU country that you visit before leaving the EU. So for example, even though I bought my Hermes Birkin in France, I was going to Italy afterwards, so they need to check that you're actually leaving the EU before they will give you the stamp. So because my passport is still to another EU country, the Paris airport would not stamp this. I actually had to go to the Florence, Italy airport, and they checked that I had a boarding pass back to the US, leaving the EU before they would give me the authorization stamp. So I carried this envelope to Italy. I bought a couple more things in Italy. And then in Italy, the threshold for getting a VAT tax refund is actually higher than in France. It is 155 euros, and they have a tax rate of 22%. So basically, when I was purchasing something in the Hermes Italy store, they were like, hey, do you want to get VAT back in order for us to issue you a receipt for a VAT refund? They did again provide me with 2 receipts, one for me to keep by myself and then one to put in the envelope, a different envelope to send to the Italian Global Blue website. So it looks exactly the same, and actually the address was the same, but instead of saying FR here, it said IT. So all of these envelopes are going to this address. So what did I do at the Florence, Italy airport? I actually received an email from Global Blue that said they had changed their authorization process due to COVID. So in some places and in most of the EU airports, there is a Global Blue counter that you bring the envelope to, your receipt to, and then you don't seal the envelope yet and you give it to them and they check everything. And sometimes they want to see the item that you bought. So they said that they had actually closed their counters and you were actually supposed to go to customs in order to get the authorization stamp. And without the stamp, your VAT tax request is not valid, so they will not refund you the VAT tax. So I did go look for this in the Florence airport. I was a little bit confused. I asked for where the customs counter was. It was a little desk, and the lady there seemed very knowledgeable about what she was doing. So she checked my boarding pass and my passport, like I mentioned. And then I had both my envelopes for the Italian receipt and also the French receipts. So for the Italian receipt, she was able to give a stamp digitally in the system. The customs lady did have me write the credit card number that I wanted the tax back to be refunded on. She had me write that and sign it on each of the receipts. And then she had me still put the receipt in this envelope. You can see here, you rip this off and then you fold it over, you seal it. The seal on this is not very good. The glue really sucks, so she just stapled it closed for me. And then for the Paris receipts, because I had a couple, she said you could, put it all in the same envelope, which is why I have an extra envelope here. She physically stamped it and signed it, and then she was like, yeah, put it in the envelope. I had her staple it shut again, and then I went back to the Global Blue counter, which was in a separate location. And in front of that counter, there was a mailbox. So I was supposed to put the sealed envelopes in that mailbox, and there was already quite a few in there. And then it usually takes about a month to process. That's what they estimate.
And just to note, the line at the Paris airport for the tax refund counter was very long.
But yeah, so that is the whole process for traveling in and out of Europe and for the VAT refund. Please let me know if you have any questions. I wish you the best of luck if you are traveling during this time. Please stay safe. Europe is quite good about mask mandates. I felt pretty safe there. Please let me know if you have any questions at all. I know it can be quite scary if you don't know what to expect when you get there, and if it'll be hard or easy to get tested and finding a testing location. Some things you do have to plan ahead for, like making an appointment for testing if you don't want to stand in line at the free locations. If you like this kind of content, please make sure to like this video, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And I can't wait to see you